All right. About a year ago in July, I was walking through a county fairgrounds, walked up by the wash rack, and here was this kid, about a quarter to 6 in the morning. He's rinsing out his steer. And I watched him for a second. His hands were shaking. Not because it was cold that morning, it was nerves. He knew that 8 months worth of work were going to come down to what happens in the next few hours. We've all been in that wash rack one way or another, and we all got there the same way, whether we knew it or not. Um, Today I'm going to talk to you about the 4 C's. It's one of the most powerful tools that I've ever used in business, but it applies to the stock show world and it applies to really life. The first C that we'll talk about, C number 1, is commitment. So once you make a public commitment to something, that starts this entire cascade. So the moment you pick out that animal for sale, decide to flush a donor, put money on the table, you've made a commitment. I remember a young Doc Farnum back in the day. If you would have looked at me as my 9-year-old self, and really if there was a picture of what a Freddie 4-H'er looked like, it was me. And I remember standing there and telling my dad and my grandpa, I'm next year going to take a steer, a barrow, and a wether to the state fair. And that was the commitment I made on that day, and it started the cascade, even though I had no idea at that time what it was doing. I also remember a young exhibitor that I know very well. Mara White told me one day that she was going to win the All Iowa Showdown, and if you know anything about the All Iowa Showdown, you know that's a pretty bold statement. It's a gauntlet of, you've got to win your county, you've got to win your district, then you've got to get to the All Iowa Showdown and win that. But she made that commitment. And when you make a commitment, it actually recruits help along the way, and it brings us to the next C, that is courage. So this isn't the kind of courage that you think about in terms of a big battle or anything like that. This is the kind of courage that happens every morning when you're having to feed before school, when you're working hair and don't wanna. Though that's the kind of courage, the courage to marshal through that I don't wanna is the kind of courage we're talking about. And what you'll see is a lot of folks will quit. This is where they quit when it starts to get hard, when it starts to look like somewhere around month 3 is kind of where it happens, and you'll see people that'll just bow out. So there's also where health problems show up, where the feeding gets hard, all of the rest of that, the good stockmanship that you need to have, but that courage, if you marshal through it, will help you develop capability. And capability is the 4th C, or the 3rd C rather. I've seen that kid that couldn't lead a steer and hold a show stick at the same time in March. By the time he gets to August, is winning showmanship classes in his division. That's what happens when you work all the way through this, is that you develop those capabilities that are going to help you succeed. And when you do that, nobody shows up at this thing capable. You may see people that you think have known all of this from day one. You'll see them at your county show, you'll see them at the state fair, you'll see them at jackpots, and you'll think, hey, those guys have got it all together and have had it all together. But I'm telling you that none of us showed up here capable in the very beginning. We all had to develop that capability, and we did it through commitment and the courage to marshal through the hard stuff. And that capability that you build this year becomes a foundation for what you're going to build on next year, and so on all the way through your show career. And it goes further than that, but We'll talk about that in a minute. The last thing is confidence. Once you have the capability and recognize it in yourself, you're going to know that it's not about hoping anymore. It's about knowing that you did the work, that you put in the time and the effort, and that you did your very best, no matter what that judge said on that day. It is still one person's opinion on one day. So there's another concept here that I want you to think about, and we talk about it as the gain and the gap. So you can, if you think about this, and you can try to compare yourself against an ideal. I think of that as trying to walk to the horizon. You can try to do that, but the horizon is always going to be out there. You're never going to get to it. But if you measure from where you came from and measure the gains that you've made rather than the gap you have to ideal, that's how you build confidence, and that's how you build an entire career. Is don't measure the gap, measure the gain. So the last thing about this is you can't stop. Mara achieved her goal. She stood at that backdrop at the All Iowa Showdown her senior year through all of the trials and tribulations she had to do to get there. There were years when she didn't get through county. There were years when she didn't get through districts. There were years when she got through districts and wasn't in the hunt at the All Iowa, but she did win it. But here's the thing: you've got to take those victories that you achieve, whatever it is for you, and you've got to aspire to something bigger next. If you're aging out, that's college, that's a career, that's building your own business, those kind of things. But you always have one of the things that you need to think about is that your future is bigger than your present. And if you do that, even when you get to be an old guy like me, and think about your future being more than your present is, that is what motivates you to move on and go on in life. And what we're doing this whole stock show thing for is we talk about better livestock a lot, but what we're really doing this for is to make better kids and better people, and that's what this is all about. So I hope this did something for you, that you got something out of it, that we're pursuing the 4 C's and walking through that. So back to that wash rack, I want to talk about that kid for a second, because those shaking hands weren't because of fear. They were because he cared, and he cared because he put in the work. He was doing his thing, and that's he committed to something that scared him, and that's what you should do, is commit to something that scares you, and then have the courage to show up when it's hard. Build the capability one day at a time, and when the confidence comes, and it will, don't sit on it. Go commit to something bigger. That's 4 C's, that's stock show, and that's the whole deal. Thanks.